Morning Answer continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So, day off yesterday and the Trump trial. We got to look at one of the members of the jury pool that was not selected, but only because she had a scheduling conflict.
Right. That's the only reason why. And this might be another reason why Dan Proft is single, too. But I don't know.
She was otherwise, I'm reading between the lines, but she was otherwise deemed to be someone who was able to be impartial. Mm-hmm. Here's what she said to the assembled press after going through the process of becoming a member of the Trump jury and then that not happening.
Can you share your opinion of the former president and why you felt that you could be unbiased?
I'm not a fan. During COVID-19, I lived with someone who was immunocompromised, and I think his handling of COVID-19 was abysmal. I have a sister who is adopted from China, and the comments he made about China when he was running for president made her very anxious and therefore made me angry. There are policies he has supported that regard women and reproductive health that I do not agree with. And I think all of that needs to be addressed.
So basically, he's a racist, misogynistic, almost killed her entire family. But I can be unbiased.
Yeah, the key phrase there, too, at the end is all of that needs to be addressed. You know, like in a jury trial where we can punish him for disagreeing with our political views. Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, don't worry, young lady, because there are many behind you who I'm sure share your similar attitude. And as we've been saying, too, I mean, if you're going to put together a little Star Chamber proceeding and you're going to have a conflicted judge and a political hack pursuing his own political ambitions rather than a prosecutor operating under the rule of law, then you might as well wire up the jury, too. I mean, don't leave anything for chance, God's sakes.
Sure reminds me of that, the lead juror, the foreperson in the Georgia Trump case. Remember that? His grand jury, and she went out and she was acting so weird about, you know, how she wanted to subpoena. She wants Trump to testify because she wants to meet him and see him in person.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, by the way, before we get to our guests, I did want to mention this sort of short documentary film that was put together and is up over at American Greatness, amgreatness.com. It's just like 30 minutes.
Okay. What is it?
It's called Chasing Trump, and it provides a pretty good profiles on the four prosecutors, Jack Smith, Fani Willis, Letitia James, Alvin Bragg, and just, you know, sort of it's a nice little information piece that provides some institutional memory of all that's transpired over the last 2.5 to 3 years now as well. So just to sort of refresh your recollection as we're getting into the meat of it, because there's a lot to revisit. For more on all of this, we're pleased to be joined by Adam Mill. Adam is an attorney specializing in labor and employment and public administration law. He's a contributor to the Federalist, to the aforesaid American Greatness, and the Daily Caller. Adam, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, Dan and Amy, for having me on. Actually, this last article was published in chroniclesmagazine.org, which I would compare to National Review without the Trump derangement syndrome.
Oh, so right, yes.
For having me on.
Yeah, that's
magazine.org.
Yeah, Chronicles. That's many of our listeners will know Chronicles. That's a good description. Yeah, you've got a piece about Alvin Bragg's witch trial where you indeed compare it to the Salem witch trials. So, are we still? I mean, one of the things that you, again, refreshing our recollection, because we discussed this when the indictment was handed down, but people need to be reminded. We're still waiting to find out what law Trump broke with the payment of said funds, aren't we?
So actually, we don't even know exactly what it is that he's accused of being covering up. Now, when you read these articles about the trial and what he's charged with, they almost never link to the original indictment. It's all just kind of this hand wave stuff, and they talk about all these, they give the list that you always hear about Trump, and like the juror did about him being racist or about him having sex with a porn star. That's not what the indictment says. The indictment, and by the way, I'm not an attorney in New York. I just read the indictment, and I'm telling you what it says. The indictment says that he is accused of entering false business records, and there's like 34 business records, but all the charges say the same thing. He entered false business records to cover up and further another crime. Okay,
right. So that's what we don't know.
Right. We don't know what the other crime is.
Right.
And if you're Trump's attorney, you can win by either showing you didn't cover up or you didn't commit the crime that you're accused of covering up. But Bragg has gone all the way to the jury trial, and he's bringing the jurors online, and he still has not identified the crime that Trump is accused of covering it up. And when he interviews it, he's like, well, I don't have to. And sometimes he talks about election expenditure disclosures, and other times he talks about committing fraud on the electorate. I don't even know what crime that's supposed to be. At one point he says, it's the actual agreement between him and Stormy Daniels that's illegal. But he doesn't know. It's a moving target. So that's why I said, well, it could be anything. We'll find out at the end of the trial. Maybe it's witchcraft. There's still a witchcraft charge on the books in New York. And as all of these people come, tumbling out with their stories of woe about Trump, maybe one of them's going to accuse him of reading tarot cards illegally in the state of New York. And maybe that's what he was accused of covering up.
Well, this is so material because this is ubiquitously referred to as the hush money trial. But paying somebody hush money is not a crime, yet the payments that were documented are in furtherance of some crime, said Alvin Bragg, who won't tell us what that crime is, and it's not obvious where he would be trying to hang his hat with respect to the underlying crime, because without that, you don't have much of a case, and maybe even with that, you don't have much of a case.
And let's just say, for the sake of argument, that the hush money agreement was a crime. Let's just for this purpose of discussion, let's just agree in principle that maybe it was a crime. Trump hasn't been charged with that. He hasn't been convicted of that. There's no. How are they going to prove at the trial that he committed this underlying crime if they're not going to charge him and give him a chance to confront and cross-examine the witnesses about this supposed crime that he's on notice of having committed? I mean, I don't know how they're going to prove this case if they're not going to charge him with the crime he's accused of covering up.
Well, at some point, isn't the expectation that he would? I mean, this is a kangaroo court to be sure, but even kangaroo courts have their limitations. I mean, isn't there the anticipation that at some point that's going to be charged, the underlying crime?
I mean, I don't see how they can do that. They can put a jury instruction asking the jurors to find that a crime was committed, but if he wasn't put on notice of the charge, I mean, if I were the attorney, I would immediately file a motion as soon as the jury's impaneled for the prosecutor to articulate what crime he's supposedly accused of covering up, and I would move to dismiss. This is ridiculous. I mean, I don't understand how you can put someone on trial for covering up a crime without saying what crime they covered up.
And the money that he used did not come from his campaign fund, right? Wasn't it a check written to Michael Cohen, like 3 separate checks?
Yeah, he used his own money. He reimbursed Cohen for these expenditures. And by the way, I don't know if you know this, he disclosed these payments to Cohen in a Federal Elections Commission campaign expenditures disclosure. And by the way, all of these supposed false statements, I believe they all happened after the election. So I'm not sure how any of these business records could have had any impact on an election that happened before the false records were created. But we don't know because Alvin Bragg won't explain any of this in his indictment. So I guess Trump will have to be surprised during the trial to find out.
You got to be convicted to find out what you did.
Very Chicago-esque here.
It's just, I can't wait to find. When I'm in jail, then I'm going to find out what I did wrong. It's something. Now, I mean, just on the assumption again here for the sake of argument, based on how fixed this thing seems to be, that he is convicted. I mean, doesn't he already have? I think he's got several grounds to appeal, but it seems to me a glaring one right now would be the judge's failure to recuse himself, given at minimum the obvious appearance of a conflict.
Yeah, I mean, the judges, if I understand the press reports accurately, the judge has a daughter who is actively involved in, political action against Trump himself. And there's definitely an appearance here that, the judge might be influenced by family members so involved with that. There have been a couple of updates in the case, if you don't mind me sharing that.
No,
yesterday, the prosecution filed something called a Sandoval notice. And basically what this is the prosecutor is putting Trump on notice that if he takes the stand, here are the things he's going to get cross-examined on. So they're actually going to introduce to the jury the fact that this bond violations. When Trump makes a public statement criticizing these cases, that's contempt. He's going to get fined for that. They're going to try and introduce that to the jury. They're going to try and bring up the Eugene Carroll case to the jury. What has the Eugene Carroll case got to do with any of this? And so they're going to try and use Trump's criticism of the process as a way of persuading the jury that Trump can't be trusted. I don't even understand it. Trump subpoenaed communication between Stormy and some of these other lawfare folks. So Trump's attorneys suspect that Stormy or her attorney have been coordinating with like Eugene Carroll and maybe some of the prosecutors. He's also subpoenaed the records of some of these former prosecutors that worked on the case to try and get a hold of records. But there's this story, I don't know if it's true, but it's a good story, that when they tried to serve Stormy, she refused to accept the subpoena, and they had to put it at her feet. Oh. And now they're arguing that they don't have good service against Stormy. But so they're definitely trying to resist giving Trump documents that he could use to defend this case.
They can't show the Billy Bush Hollywood Access Hollywood tape. That's not going to be played in court, correct?
I did not see that on the Sandoval notice, but I would be shocked if they didn't try that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can reference the content of it, but they're not going to be able to play the video. I mean, the whole point here is this is just it's all prejudicial. More grounds for appeal. It's all prejudicial. There's no probative value. This is just in case you have any sympathy or empathy for this guy, or maybe even like him a little bit. Here's all the reasons you shouldn't like him. This is just conviction by character assassination, is what it is. It has nothing to do with the underlying law. And so this is a political argument to affect a legal outcome, as far as I can tell.
Yeah. Did you happen to see Trump's visit to Harlem? I think it happened yesterday.
Yeah. Right.
The video of it.
Yeah,
I mean,
the bodegas.
I think they're going to. Right. I think they may be surprised that Trump still has some sympathy. New York is a heavily anti-Trump state, but it's like a 60-40, maybe a 70-30. So if you have 12 jurors, there very well could be somebody on there who remembers Trump from the old days. And
the odds are a little bit more stacked against him in Manhattan, though. The other thing too, I mean, just in terms of calling interesting witnesses, if this is going to be, the complete circus that it's setting up to be. How about Trump attorneys call Cy Vance and call the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District to have them testify as to why they passed on this very same case? How about calling Alvin Bragg to have him explain why he initially passed on it?
Yeah, I think you could probably bring people in from the Federal Elections Commission to explain why they passed on pursuing any kind of election charge against Trump. Yeah, I think there's a lot to work with, but they are hampered by the fact that they don't know what crime it is they're accused of covering up.
Yeah, that's absurd.
So if they knock down one argument, another one could spring up, in its place. It's really unfair.
Adam Mill is an attorney specializing in labor, employment, and public administration law. He's a contributor to the Federalist, to American Greatness, and the Daily Caller. His recent piece, Alvin Bragg's Witch Trial, you can find at Chronicles. And again, that documentary it's a 30-minute documentary on the 4 prosecutors is over at American Greatness, amgreatness.com. It's called Chasing Trump. Adam Mill, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Have you been struggling to find an easy, safe, and secure document scanning solution for Salesforce.com, Microsoft 365, SharePoint, or OnBase by Highland? Your struggle is now over, and it's time to